Hello, and welcome to our Albuquerque Clean Cars virtual press conference. Our event features state and local elected officials, along with public health advocates, who have come together to speak about their urgency to reduce pollution from automobiles and call on state leaders to adopt strict clean car standards for New Mexico and call on the Federal Environmental Protection Agency to enact strong clean car standards for the nation. For our agenda, we'll have 2 to 3 minutes of formal remarks from each of our speakers will be visible and audible via their video. At the end of the formal remarks, we'll have a brief session for questions related to today's event. I now want to introduce Albuquerque Mayor Tim Keller. Mayor, the microphone is yours.
Hello. Well, good morning, everybody. And it's an honor to be here with such a great panelists list as well. And so we're very excited to share with you, at least from my perspective at the city, what we're working on with respect to clean cars and emissions. And so let me begin, I think, just by saying that when I came into this position about 5 years ago, we wanted to commit ourselves to really combating climate change on a number of fronts. And we also wanted to try and do what we can in the very, very short term, because we have lots of I think aspirational and appropriate targets down the road, whether it's, renewable energy standards in 2040 and things like this. But we also wanted, while we work on that long term, to say, okay, what can we do that will literally help like this year? And so I'll share with you just a mix of some of those initiatives. But we also want to remember that, when it comes to, especially with respect to cars, pollution output is also about our people. It's about literally the air that we breathe. And for us, we know that Albuquerque, for folks who maybe are a little bit less familiar with the city, we sit in a valley. So we also have varying air standards depending on where you live. And that's also why a lot of our regulations and a lot of our built environment initiatives are also trying to reverse years of putting a lot of highways in the middle of the valley and also polluting plants in the middle of the valley, which of course, essentially traps in emissions geographically with respect to, or topographically with respect to the landscape. So we've got a lot working against us from the get-go, but we've made a lot of progress. Now, before I talk about the progress, I do want to mention that even in Bernalillo County, we've seen elevated levels of ozone. And so this is something that has recently crept up in the last few years. And we continue again to sort of push back against the trend of a major metropolitan area that happens to live between volcanoes and mountains. And so to do that, here's what we're looking at. We are adopting new standards, whether it's following global or setting our own local standards to fight climate change. And wonderfully, our state legislature has given us the authority to use things like cumulative impacts to help set new standards, and also has allowed us regional opportunities to set increased clean car standards. And so those are in the rulemaking and promulgation process at our city. And those are all new things based on that additional authority that the federal government and the state government have been able to give us. So we very much appreciate that flexibility. Now, we're also working on our zero emission vehicle first policy with respect to all city vehicles. So the idea is that as soon as a vehicle is, sort of retired or phased out, it will be replaced by a zero emissions vehicle. And so we've started to do this. We're starting with our smaller vehicles where that's easier to do. And then, eventually, especially technology and batteries permitting, we want to do that with heavier utility trucks and so forth. But we're starting with our city fleet. And in total, this is thousands of cars that we're going to rotate to electric or hybrid. And it also is, fortunately, we're catching up finally with even our bus fleet. So we got our first electric bus in and we're getting 4 more, I think by the end of the summer. And so again, we're trying to do that across the fleet. And as folks I'm sure know on this call, the hardest part of that's actually solid waste trucks, trash trucks, because they're so heavy. So we're looking at different alternatives for solid waste. But again, we're starting with the trucks we can do it with and the cars we can do it with and phasing those in. We also are, continue our commitment to also building that electrical infrastructure environment for electric vehicles. And so we have 20 new charging stations, 36 new ports throughout the city. It was a major upgrade. I think when we came in, we had 2. And so now we have them in at least different regions around the city. And we're also trying to look at the big picture of where we get the electricity that powers our electric vehicles. And so I think the biggest thing that we've been able to accomplish is just last week, we turned on literally a solar power plant out in the Jicarilla Reservation that powers 88% now of city government electricity. So we're now in this contest. It's a wonderful contest between cities to be the first city government that is 100% solar. And now we're tied for fourth. And so we're doing much, much better on that front. And I think we're going to be tied for second by next year. And so we should be 100% renewable by 2024. So that's very cool. And it's just an example of city government sort of demonstrating that you can get to 100% renewable, and you can do it, in less than, 20 years. You can actually do it in the foreseeable future. So I think with that, there are amazing panelists that it's also great to see their faces joining us via Zoom. And so they're going to have a lot more details. So I think I would wrap things up from Albuquerque standpoint by just saying that the new clean car standards that we're working on, it's common sense. It's time we adjust this both for modern technology and also for sort of the environment that we live in right here in Albuquerque. And so we're very excited to move forward with that. And we also know that the technology keeps getting better, and that's going to help accelerate all of those deadlines and all those initiatives. And so we appreciate everyone who's had a hand in increasing whether it's things like battery life or it's EV charging efficiency or solar panel efficiency. All of that is a critical piece to what we're trying to do to really do something about climate change. So with that, thank you so much for including me, and I really appreciate it. And thanks for all the work everyone is doing for clean car standards. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll now pass it over to State Senator Mimi Stewart, Senate President Pro Tem District 17.
All right, thank you so much. And it's great to hear from our mayor in Albuquerque. It makes me glad I'm living in Albuquerque to hear everything that he's doing. So, if you just look at New Mexico now, you will see the danger that we are in. We have the largest wildfire right now in our state, in the country. It's 140,000 acres, and we are evacuating people from little towns all over New Mexico. So we have got to not slow down in addressing the elimination of the emissions that are warming our planet. And, in New Mexico, we're such a rural state that we drive a lot. We're the 5th largest state geographically in the country, although we only have 2 million people. So we're spread out and we need to get around, and we drive too much. So our efforts on electrifying the transportation system are just crucial. We get most of our emissions from the oil and gas industry in New Mexico, but right behind that industry is our transportation sector. So as more and more cars are fully electric, we also will rely on a grid that's powered by more renewable energy. The mayor mentioned our Energy Transition Act that we passed several years ago. We're excited about that. We've set very aggressive standards. We want 50% of our electricity to be renewable by 2030, 80% by 2040, 100% clean by 2045. And all of our electric utilities agree to those standards and are working on meeting them. So it's really good to hear from the mayor about how Albuquerque is moving themselves. We have issues in New Mexico with our rural community, that we have many low-income communities of color that are bearing the worst of the air pollution. The mayor mentioned the highway going right down the valley. But if we can turn that around and invest in cleaner cars and set these clean car standards and get our electricity from renewable, we've at least got a chance to stop the progression of climate change in the Southwest. I have solar panels on my house. I've had them for, gosh, I'm forgetting how long I think it's like 12 years. They were very expensive back then. They're much cheaper now. We've increased our funding for our solar, rooftop solar, and we're continuing to work on that. So this issue of our low-income communities is important because asthma is rampant in the southwestern part of our country. My brother has it, my daughter has it. You've got to have cleaner air to deal with asthma. We have about 25,000, almost 26,000 children in our state that are dealing with asthma, and 136,000 adults. That's a lot of people that need cleaner air. So, you know, originally New Mexico was one of the 14 states that wanted to adopt the Clean Car Standards. And when we got our governor after Richardson, Martinez, she just stopped us from moving forward with that. So between the Trump administration stopping California and Governor Martinez stopping New Mexico, we're finally glad to be done with those albatrosses and moving forward. We have two fantastic US senators, Ben Ray Lujan and Martin Heinrich, that are totally on board getting clean car standards through the EPA and the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration. It's now in their lap, and we really want them to adopt these clean car standards. And our governor, totally on board with it. In New Mexico, we are back to basics and are attempting to pass those clean car standards the way we did originally with those other states. So we've got good leadership in New Mexico. We are moving forward. We know what we need to do. We have one of our tribes, our Picaris Pueblo. They're totally 100% electric, renewable energy during the day. We're just committed to this. So let me introduce now our newest city councilor, Tammy Feeblecorn. Tammy was instrumental in an incredible bill that we passed in the last session, the SEED Act, Community Energy Efficiency Development Act. That is so exciting. She'll probably tell you about it, but it gives money to our rural communities for energy efficiency in affordable housing. So we're just trying to check all the boxes here in New Mexico. We appreciate the moms for offering this, and I'll pass it over to Tammy Feeblecorn.
Thank you so much, Pro Tem Stewart. I really appreciate those kind words. I am so excited to let everybody know that New Mexico's rulemaking for our new clean car standards starts tomorrow. And this is an incredibly important step towards meeting our climate goals, improving public health, and helping New Mexicans reduce their transportation burdens. Make no mistake, climate change is real and its impacts are being felt worldwide. Here in New Mexico, as Pro Tem Stewart mentioned, we have massive fires that are ravaging the entire state almost. We experience more and more extreme heat of 100+ degrees day after day after day in the summers now. Transportation is the leading contributor to climate change in the US, and it's the second largest contributor in New Mexico. So obviously reducing transportation emissions will benefit greenhouse gas reductions and will help us fight climate change. But there are other benefits as well. Reduced transportation emissions will also improve public health. In their recent State of the Air report, the American Lung Association gave Bernalillo County, which is where Albuquerque sits, an F for the level of ozone pollution. Of particular concern to me is the fact that frontline communities are often located near major transportation corridors. That leaves those folks most at risk from emissions that cause asthma and other health impacts. So reducing emissions will increase public health. Last but not least, more efficient transportation will help everyone reduce their transportation burden. I drove a hybrid for many years, and now I drive an electric vehicle, and I spend so much less on fuel than other folks that I know. As recent events show, prices of finite resources like gasoline and diesel fuel will continue to rise and fluctuate. Increased efficiency in transportation means less money or no money spent on those resources and more money to spend on other things. In a state like New Mexico, with very high levels of poverty, these cost savings can and will really impact the quality of life for many people. But I want to say that our state rulemaking isn't the end of the need. We do have a wonderful congressional delegation that is pushing the EPA to quickly adopt the strongest possible clean vehicle standards at the federal level. We're thankful that President Biden has already restored the original clean car standards that impact model years 2023 through 2026. But we ask that the Biden administration now step up and move to strengthen its post-2026 fuel economy standards so that we can get all these benefits of reduced emissions to everyone in the United States. Clean car standards are vital, and every state and nation must do everything they can to implement the strongest, most beneficial transportation standards possible for the planet, for the public health, and for our pocketbooks. So with that, I will turn it over to Anna Rios. She's the New Mexico Field Coordinator for Mom's Clean Air Force, and they're also our host today on our Facebook Live. So I'll hand it over to you, Anna.
Thank you so much, Counselor. Well, as you said, my name is Ana Rios. I am the New Mexico State Coordinator for Mom's Clean Air Force. I live here in Albuquerque with my family, including my 3 children. Last month, the American Lung Association released the State of the Air report, which stated that over 30% of Americans live in places where the air is unhealthy to breathe. This includes our city, surrounded in the east side by the Sandia Mountains and where the Rio Grande flows through, has received an F grade for ozone pollution again. My family and I live in the San Jose neighborhood, which is well known in the city because it is a Latino area surrounded by oil pollution. My house is located 1 mile away from an interstate highway. I am living next to a heavy-duty business truck company. Transportation is a major source of pollution that leads to ground-level ozone. Ozone is a lung irritant that triggers asthma attacks, among many other health harms. Across New Mexico, more than 34,000 children and about 165,000 adults suffer from asthma. 5 years ago, I was diagnosed with acute bronchitis. Since then, I have had to be attentive to air quality conditions because I find it hard to breathe when it is very polluted. Right now, if I go outside, I can smell the smoke from wildfires. And I feel my airways struggling to get oxygen into my lungs. When pollution affects a family's health, it also affects their economy and lifestyle. Many Latino families do not have access to health insurance, and an illness linked to pollution or environmental impact in our homes means having to decide between going to the market, paying rent, or going to the doctor or buying medicine. The transportation sector isn't just making ozone worse, it is also the largest source of climate-harming carbon pollution in the US. The Intergovernmental Panel of Climate Change released their 6th Climate Impact Assessment in February, which highlights that climate change is already harming many communities, particularly those which are low income and minority. Climate change is severely affecting New Mexico and our neighboring states. It is only May, and New Mexico is already in a state of emergency due to wildfires. It is alarming what can happen in the hottest months of the year. From 2010 to 2020, New Mexico experienced 14 extreme weather events. Our state is getting drier and hotter. I'm very concerned about how these circumstances may affect my children's development and their future, because we are Latinos. As such, my kids are 3 times more likely to be negatively affected by air pollution because of where we live. It is for that reason we use an electric vehicle to reduce the environmental impact of vehicle use, but we are only one family. The Environmental Protection Agency and the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration must set the strongest possible federal clean car standards in the shortest possible time frame to ensure we are protecting families from vehicle pollution, saving drivers money at the pump, and fighting climate change. National tailpipe pollution standards help ensure that automakers make cleaner vehicles and market them to all consumers. It is critical that these standards are strong enough to push the automakers to invest in new technology to significantly reduce emissions. We need strong standards for model years 2027 to 2035 to ensure the US can achieve 100% zero emission vehicle sales, but no later than 2035, consistent with the Biden administration's science-based goal of net zero greenhouse gas emission economy-wide by 2050. Today, we are calling on Senator Heinrich and Senator Lujan to join us and support the strongest federal clean car standards possible from EPA and National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. Parents across the nation want to see a rapid transition to zero-emitting vehicles. We need cleaner air for our children and our communities, and we have no time to waste. Please act now to better protect children, people with asthma, older adults, and other vulnerable groups from the health harms of air pollution. Everyone has the right to breathe clean air.
Thank you, Anna, and thank you to all of our speakers. That's the end of the formal remarks portion of our event. We now have a few minutes for questions related to today's event. For members of the media, if you have a question, you can use the raise your hand function, or you can type that you have a question into the chat box, or you can even type your question into the chat box and I can work through the question request one at a time. I can also unmute your line. And before we get to your question, I just ask that you state your name, media outlet, and if you have a specific panelist that you're directing your question to. Again, please use the raise your hand function or the chat function to indicate you have a question. Please use the raise your hand function or the chat function if you have a question for our panelists today. Seeing no questions, I'll open the floor back up to our speakers if they have any final comments that they would like to make before we wrap up. Okay, once again, I want to thank all of our speakers for their time and continued support for addressing the climate crisis and investing in strong clean car standards on the state level and on the federal level. I want to thank Moms Clean Air Force New Mexico for sponsoring our event, and thanks to all of our elected officials for their time and leadership on this issue. I should note that a video recording of this event will be available on the Moms Clean Air Force Facebook page, and a link to that video will be sent out in the press release within the next hour. If you have any questions, please let us know. Contact information is listed on the advisory as well as on the press release. Thanks again to all of our speakers. Have a wonderful day.